Local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education, and literacy in our community.
The famous Tulsa race riot will be the topic on Read About It tonight. Hi, I'm B.J. Williams. Tim Madigan will talk about his book, The Burning. Susie Beasley will talk with Pauline Rodriguez. Kids Corner will feature Rosemary Sarsky. We also have Doug Benton and Jane J. Rowe. Coming up, Tim Madigan.
The following public service program is brought to you by the Metropolitan Library System. And now, Read About It, with your host, B.J. Williams.
Tim Madigan is an award-winning journalist with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. He has written a book called See No Evil. His book, The Burning, which is about the Tulsa race riot, was a finalist for the Oklahoma Book Awards in the nonfiction category. I was able to talk with Tim about his book at the March banquet for the Oklahoma Book Awards. I think you'll enjoy what he had to say. Tim, what inspired you to write a book about the Tulsa race riots?
Well, until early in the year 2000, I had never heard of the Tulsa race riot, and a wire story on the Tulsa Race Riot Commission crossed my desk at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram about that time, and I thought to myself, how in the world could we not have heard about such a terrible thing? So I went up to Tulsa and I did a piece about the riot for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and after that was published, a literary agent in Dallas noticed the story and asked me if I'd be interested in pursuing a book, and one thing led to another, and there you go.
Well, I would imagine that doing the research on it could be difficult, couldn't it?
Well, the research was challenging, there's no question, but I found it to be one of the most interesting periods of my career, the first time that I had really dug into historical research per se. Of course, I interviewed as many of the survivors of the riot, both white and black, or people who were living at that time, and had relevant reminiscences, as many of them as I could. But I also spent many, many hours in the Tulsa Public Library going over newspaper accounts of that time and court documents, and fortunately other people, historians, journalists, etc., had attempted to write things about the riot in the past and had interviewed survivors back in the 70s, people who would have been teenagers or young adults at the time. And so that was a real great source of treasure of information for me, too.
Well, you had mentioned one in particular, a young, well-to-do white girl. She was apparently quite young when the race riots happened, and she did a lot of interviewing, but I believe the results were never published. She just collected the interviews?
Well, I managed to come across the transcripts of her interviews that she had done over the course of probably 30 years, 300 or 400 pages of transcripts interviewing dozens of survivors and white people, even 3 members of the KKK. And she had compiled them loosely, and even given her work a title, but it had never been published. And her name is Ruth Avery, and that was one of the richest sources of information I had. And I was very pleased to be able to use it, and I thank Ruth profusely in the acknowledgments to the book. Unfortunately, right about the time that the book was published, she passed away. And so I hope that she knew finally that her labors of those many years had been put to good use, and I think really contributed to the public understanding of what happened.
Well, one of the things I appreciated about the book was the way you set the stage. When you talked about just touching on the history of the Jim Crow laws and birth of the nation, and just sort of the general atmosphere in this part of the country, I think that without that, perhaps the reader might have had more difficulty in the reader of today, of 2001, understanding what was going on in 1920s Tulsa.
Well, when I started the research, and I was born and raised in a tiny little town in the upper Midwest in northern Minnesota, where there weren't a lot of black people, hardly any black people, and for most of my life, issues of race and racial history weren't terribly relevant. And so I had assumed, not knowing any better, that what happened in Tulsa, 300 people dead and 35 square blocks obliterated as it was, that this had cropped up as some sort of grotesque historical accident. But what I found out instead, once I started doing the research, was that it was, rather than an accident, it was a metaphor for that period in our history. And while it was easily the worst incident of its kind in our history, it was completely consistent with what was going on in the country in the 100 years after the Civil War. And I didn't understand that until I started doing the research, and so I'm hoping that that's one of the things that the reader comes away with, is that sense of context and that sense of history, however difficult it might be to look at. And it was very important to me to put Tulsa in that context, because I think it's very important.
Mm-hmm. Well, I also appreciated the approach you took of telling it from the point of view of as many people as possible, because we learned a little bit about the individual background, which I think helped us understand why, once this situation reached a trigger point, you might say, that these people acted the way they did, and as you said, 300 people ended up dead.
Well, just from the riot had been written about by other people and other writers over the years, but from a relatively detached point of view. And what I was, for a couple of different reasons, I really wanted to as best as I was able, to humanize what had happened. And because real people died and real people suffered. And this wasn't kind of a broad, real human drama played out there. The second part of that, from a writer's perspective, is I know, and early in the research, my agent and I were talking that we felt we had to identify several major characters in the book and flesh them out as much as we could, and try to write as a novelist would, and provide a sense of narrative and a sense of story, so people would get drawn into the book and want to read it, and thereby find, so the book would find a larger audience. It's important to me that people read this book, and I wanted to write it in such a way that was, even as awful as it was, that it would be compelling enough that people would want to read it.
Well, I have read some of those kinds of books that you talk about that are very detached, and I think they're unsuccessful because they are not written with passion. It's the writer's passion and his need to tell a story that draws me, the reader, into it and gets me involved. So I want to know, well, what on earth did that man do? Why did he do it? Did he live through it?
Right.
Sort of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I've talked to people who've read the book who say that they have identified with various characters, and they wanted to kind of keep going to find out if, what happened to Dick Roll and the guy in the elevator and all these various characters, and I just think that is essential for books of this sort. I wanted it to be a popular history. I didn't want it to be a textbook. As important as textbooks are, I wanted it to be accessible and compelling to everyone.
Well, there are a lot of us who are past our textbook reading stages who never heard of this. It was certainly never mentioned when I was in school.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think you're going to reach a lot more people with the popular. And I think you will with this book. And I think you already have with a lot of them, too.
Well, I hope so. I feel very strongly about the book. I feel very strongly about the issue. I'm kind of a new convert to, as Don Ross, the state legislator, used to call me an ignorant white boy when I started this Don, the kind of the grandfather or the father of the Tulsa Race Riot Commission. And it's really changed my life learning about the history. And I am naive enough to think that there are lots of other, particularly white people like there out me, who are just unaware of what our history was. And once they learn about it, I think it'll make a difference in the nation in ways that we can't even imagine right now.
I think so, too. And I want to thank you very much for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure.
We've had with us tonight Tim Madigan telling us about his book, The Burning, which is about the Tulsa Race Riot. You can find this book at your library and your favorite bookstore. Coming up next, we have Susie Beasley. She's talking with Pauline Rodriguez about a book I think you'll all enjoy. Pauline, who is Jeffrey Denman?
Jeffrey Denman is an actor slash dancer who played several minor roles in the Broadway show The Producers, and he also understudied Matthew Broderick. And this book is his diary of the first year that show was in production.
Right, this book, A Year with the Producers, one actor's exhausting but worthwhile journey and all that. Now, do you know a lot about the theater?
I don't, and you don't have to have a lot of theatrical knowledge to enjoy this book, although I think somebody who did would enjoy it. Jeffrey Denman is very good about explaining his terminology, and he takes you through the whole process, auditions, rehearsals, out-of-town tryouts,
And he pretty much
everything.
tells you the truth about the ups and downs and the dissatisfactions and,
Yeah.
and disappointments and things like that. Well, does the book talk about the life of a working actor?
It really does. He talks about how when he started in The Producers auditioning, he was still in the last Broadway cast of Cats.
Yes.
And while he's in The Producers, he's auditioning for another show that's going to open about a year later. Plus, he's doing little short-term dance jobs on the side. So you really get a sense that actors who aren't stars have to hustle for work all the time.
Now, The Producers, the show, it is Tony Award winning.
Won 12 Tonys. I think that's the record for most Tonys. All the musicals.
And everything else. So what happens at the end of that first year?
Well, the book ends when Jeffrey gets to go on stage for Matthew Broderick, and he knew about it ahead of time, so he's able to get his family and friends to come and see him, and he talks about the excitement of getting to be on stage in that role and having his people
Right.
come backstage to see him. But ironically, the last entry in the diary is on September 10th, 2001. So it's kind of a poignant ending, knowing that everything changed.
Dramatically. So overall, is this a serious book?
Not really. It's a lot of fun. He's got a lot of funny stories, like the time he decided to go take a boxing class to stay in shape.
And what happened to him?
Well, he nearly gets killed.
So his stories kind of things that go on during rehearsal and later
Backstage.
backstage and things like that. So he makes it sound like it's really.
It sounds like a happy, fun show. I really want to see this show, but I'm going to be really disappointed I'm not going to get to see him in it.
Well, Pauline, we really appreciate you coming and sharing with us A Year with the Producers, one actor's exhausting but worth it journey from Cats to Mel Brooks' mega hit. And this is by Jeffrey Denman, and it is available at your local library and perhaps your local bookstore. Thank you, Pauline. We'll see you next time.
Yo, see that girl? She sets the curve in my math class. Always has her homework right. Me? I hate homework, but I gotta do it, you know? But I found out her secret. She logs on to the Metro Library website and then clicks on their homework center. I couldn't believe what they have there. Help for math, science, English, and lots of other stuff too, like encyclopedias, newspapers, magazines, even science experiments. Metro Library's Homework Center website is one-stop shopping. You can even find the phone number of the nearest library so you can renew your library books. Check it out. It's like having the resources of an entire bookstore right in your computer. And since it's from Metro Library, you know the information will be dependable and up to the minute. But hey, I gotta go and log on and get to work. From now on, I'm setting the curve.
Hi, we have a book today. It's called From the Horse's Mouth. It's by Kathy Mackle, and Rosemary Zarski from the Choctaw Library would like to tell us about it. Rosemary, is this the first book that Kathy Mackle has written about these?
No, actually, it's the third book.
Oh.
She's taking the characters that were in the first book, the human characters that were in the first book, and she's sort of doing a book on each of the main ones, I guess, because this is the third, and it's the third major character from the first book that is being shown in it. And Nick has got a few problems of his own.
He's the
protagonist this time, and he's having a hard time dealing with his parents' divorce and his father's remarriage, and
kids can certainly deal with that these days.
And his mom has had to move into the garage apartment so they can rent their house. And then he notices that he keeps freezing in time.
So there's fantasy, sci-fi mixed in.
And it's a mystery. Why is this unicorn stampeding through the universe, and every time he goes by Nick gets thrown ahead a couple of hours or a couple of minutes, but he's thrown ahead in time and he has to freeze until it can get to him.
Oh my.
And it's all because the Draconians have tried to eliminate a race on a planet that consists of the unicorns, well, not the unicorns, but horse-like creatures, and
Hence
their
the title.
riders. And every once in a while from this planet, there comes a horse with a unicorn on that can warp time. And of course, the mean guys want this animal. They want to ride him, even though it's impossible to ride him unless you're his actual rider. And there's this bum wandering around town, seemingly totally dumb. No one quite figures out how this homeless bum fits into the scene. They think he's just a homeless bum, but he's not. And of course, as you can see from the title, the enemy's got some fire-breathing critters to do its will, and what the good guys send to help save the day is a rat.
Oh my, it sounds really exciting. Nick is going to have a hard time making it through these things, but we know he'll come out on top. It's called From the Horse's Mouth by Kathy Mackey. Find it at your local bookstore or at your favorite library.
Thanks, Kelly and Rosemary. It's time now for the New York Times bestseller list. We'll start out with hardback fiction. Number 10 on that list is, actually we have a tie for 9, so Blessings by Anna Quindlen is tied with The Murder Book by Jonathan Kellerman, The Little Friend by Donna Tartt, From a Buick 8 by Stephen King, The Crush by Sandra Brown, The Jansen Directive by Robert Ludlum, Knights and Rodanthe by Nicholas Sparks, Chasing the Dime by Michael Connelly. Number 2 is Alice Sebold's The Lovely Bones, and number 1 is Q is for Query by Sue Grafton. On the nonfiction list, number 10 is The Blank Slate by Steven Pinker, Abraham by Bruce Feiler, Let Freedom Ring by Sean Hannity, Stupid White Men by Michael Moore, Longitudes and Attitudes by Thomas Friedman, Sandy Koufax by Jane Levy, Let's Roll by Lisa Beamer with Ken Abraham, Live from New York by Tom Shales and James Miller, My Losing Season by Pat Conroy is number 2, and number 1 is Rudy Giuliani's Leadership with Ken Curson. On the children's list, number 10 is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban by J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Summerland by Michael Chabon, The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling, Tris by Brian Jacques, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by Rowling, Double Fudge by Judy Blume, The Thief Lord by Cornelia Funke is number 2, and number 1 is Junie B. First Grader, Toothless Wonder by Barbara Park. With me is my guest, Garland McWaters. He is the president of Territory Tellers, and he's here to tell us about some things that are happening at the library and other places. Hi, Garland.
Good afternoon.
And now we've got something going on that's really exciting for kids that'll be happening at the libraries, right?
That's right. Everybody loves a great story, and you just read off the bestsellers, and I think that indicates that. But the Territory Tellers are about the oral tradition, telling stories. And we know we've all enjoyed hearing a lot of great stories. And on November the 23rd, we are having an event called Telebration, which is actually a national event that's sponsored by the National Storytelling Network. There'll be storytelling sessions all across the country on the same, actually all around the world on the same day. And here in Oklahoma City at the Belle Isle Library, we're having a children's or a family storytelling time that afternoon. It'll be at 2 o'clock, and we have 4 tellers who are part of that program. Rosemary Zarsky, who is a part of the library system, you probably know Rosemary. Catherine Thurman, Liz Parker, who tell a lot in this area. And then another teller who's been around and gets around the world quite a bit, who's sort of our feature teller for that program, named David Titus. He tells all over the world and has been in Africa and places, and is always someone we enjoy having to tell. So they'll be at the Belle Isle Library 2 o'clock to about 3:30 on November the 23rd. We hope everybody comes out for that.
Okay, so that's a family event. It's not just for
Absolutely.
little kids or big
Right.
kids.
Yes, it's basically a family event, and of course it's geared toward our children, and we hope everybody will take advantage of that.
Great. Now, you've got something else going on, though.
Yes, as a part of Celebration, in the evening, we traditionally have an evening performance, which is geared more toward adult audiences, although not like adult stories. They are the typical stories that we tell a lot in our venues, but it's a broader audience. And we have 6 tellers. We're featuring some new tellers this year who have not been in our programs. One is a new teller, Ryan Mackey, who is a Native American student at the University of Oklahoma, and from Tahlequah. He'll be down to tell. Teresa Black, who a lot of people know, who is a reenactor, historical reenactor, will be telling some of her stories and singing songs that she writes. Larry Fisher, who works for the state of Oklahoma as a storyteller, and he's coming to introduce us to his Uncle Claude. Gordon Green, a new storytelling voice in this area, but not new to this area, will be with us. Marilyn Hudson, and then our feature teller, our last teller that evening, is Steve Cardelliff, who for a time served as the interim executive director of the National Storytelling Network. So he's an Oklahoman from Lawton, and we're excited about him being with us.
Okay. Now, where is this going to happen?
That's at the Mayflower Congregational Church. It'll be at 6:30, and that is located on Northwest 63rd Street, just east of Portland Avenue, actually.
Okay. Now, do people need to pay to go?
That's absolutely free to the public. We typically put out the tip jar and let people make any contributions they'd like to help us fund our storytelling activities. But it's free to the public. Just come and enjoy it. It's just a time to kick back and enjoy storytelling, and there are all different kinds of stories that you'll be hearing that evening.
Yeah, I have to say I often hear the kids' programs outside my office, and storytelling is a real art that I think just about anybody would enjoy.
Yes, and we're really trying to get people to understand how simple and easy it is to be a storyteller, even if you're just telling your own family stories or talking about corporate stories. It's applicable to both personal, family, and business as well.
Okay. I want to thank you very much for being with us. We've had with us Garland McWaters, president of the Territory Tellers, and you can find out more about the program that's available at Belle Isle Library by visiting the website. Coming up next, we have M.J. Van de Venner, Director of Publications at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. She'll be talking with Jane J. Rowe, who is Director of Tourism for the state of Oklahoma, and they have a book they want to share with you.
Jane, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm so delighted to have you. And why Little Women? I mean, this is a classic book.
It was so painful to try to choose one book because I read a lot. I probably read at least one book a week. But
how wonderful.
Little Women really changed my perspective about things, and I've read it 3 times, once as a young woman, and then I studied it when I was getting a master's in humanities and studied it as a part of women's studies, and then later after that. And every time I see something different, but I think it's very important in terms of the different roles of women and how they've evolved, and that's one of the things that I loved about it. Plus, the whole family and their love and unselfish nature, the joy that they find in their friendships and relationships with each other. I love reading it. I always see it in a different light.
Are there lessons for life in this book?
Oh, absolutely, and they're very moral and character building lessons, and I think the unselfish nature, again, there's some religious overtones that I hadn't picked up before that I love, like love casts out fear. Obviously, the care for the poor that Marmee does as the mother of these 4 wonderful daughters. But what I really enjoyed is the character of each daughter. And every time I visited the book, I identify with one of the daughters. But as a young woman, as a girl growing up, I really identified with Jo. And that was important for me as it was, can you imagine at the time this was written, how important and how unusual it was. For this young girl, I'll just read one thing. Jo's ambition was to do something very splendid. What it was, she had no idea as yet, but left it for time to tell her. How neat for me to read that as a little girl growing up in rural Oklahoma, because I had these inner dreams of wanting to do something splendid too.
And you have.
Well, I don't know about that,
Well,
but I
I think
always
you have.
wanted to do something different, and as well as have that same sense that Jo had of total adoration and love for family and home and the importance of that, but at the same time knowing that there was something I was being called to do that was more than being a wife and mother, although I thought those were the best that life could offer, but I wanted something more as well. And Jo really inspired me to try for that.
Well, now on your third reading, which character do you most identify with?
Well, I appreciate Meg's balance and wisdom and kind of knowing herself. All the girls kind of knew their inner nature, and that was important because that has so much to do with being content. Not every person is called to try for something splendid. Beth, in her beautiful life of loving music and loving her family and being content to be home because of her ill health, that contentment and her love for her sisters was so important. Certainly Jo's ambition and her strong will shaped her. Meg's wisdom, the oldest daughter, and finding a love and having children, but that need of Jo to write, that she didn't set that aside, but that she had to follow that dream and found success in it as well as relationships.
So this could be a wonderful book for young women today.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
Thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks.
Thanks, MJ and Jane. And now with me is Doug Benton. And Doug, you brought something really kind of interesting tonight.
It's a little different, yeah. For mystery readers who are familiar with the name Lauren D. Esselman, he's best known as the author of the Amos Walker Private Eye series, but he also writes Westerns, and his heart is really in the Western. He has said that, but he can't make as much money writing Westerns.
Right.
So but his latest book is called The Master Executioner, and it covers a profession that we know existed in the days of the West, but nobody really writes about much, and that is the professional traveling hangman. Which is, yeah, you grimace.
You could actually make a living doing that?
You could make a very good living doing it because apparently it's one of those jobs that everybody knew somebody has to do it, but nobody really wanted to do it. And these guys would travel around to smaller towns usually where it wasn't feasible to keep your own gallows and your own executioner. And if you were very good at your job, as the protagonist of this novel is, you could get in, get it done cleanly. There was no mess, no cleanup, and you were out again. And Esselman has done a lot of research, apparently, on what it takes to hang somebody well. And his character takes great pride in the fact that he does this well. He studies anatomy very carefully. He studies all kinds of scientific angles and engineering. He begins as a carpenter. That's how he gets into this business, is as a carpenter who builds gallows when nobody else wants to do that. There's also the more human side to the story as the man marries and loses his wife because she can't stand the occupation that he has chosen, and what happens to him as he travels across the West.
Thanks, Doug. Remember, you can find The Master Executioner by Lauren Esselman at your favorite library and also your bookstore. And remember to check us out at the website, www.metrolibrary.org. You can find out about this book and every other book, actually, in our holdings, as well as where the libraries are, and also a listing of our programs. So if you want to find out more about the story time on November 23rd at Belle Isle, it will be there as well. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you again next time.
local presentation of Read About It is made possible in part by a grant from Cox Communications of Oklahoma City, proud sponsor of this effort to promote reading, education,